Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Golaba Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Manachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantara Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki, Go Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Vasudevaya. Om Vasudevaya. We are reading today from the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, the third canto, chapter 23, text number 56. The chapter title is Devahuti's Lamentation. Nehayat karma dharmaya naviragaya kalpate natirtapada sevaya jivanapi mrito hisa nehayat Jivanapi mrito hisa Jivanapi mrito hisa Nehayat karma dharmaya naviragaya kalpate natirthapada sevaya jivanapi mrito hisa Nehayat karma dharmaya naviragaya kalpate tirthapada sevaya jivanapi mrito hisa Nehayat karma dharmaya naviragaya kalpate natirthapada sevaya Jivana primito hisa. Vaishnavis. Nehayat karma dharmaya naviragaya kalpate natirthapada sevaya jivanapi mrito hisa Nehayat karma dharmaya naviragaya kalpate natirthapada sevaya jivanapi mrito hisa Nehayat karma dharmaya naviragaya kalpate natirthapada sevaya jivanapi mrito hisa Na, not, iha, here, yat, which, karma, work, dharmaya, for perfection of religious life. Na, not, viraghaya, for detachment. Kalpate, leads. Na, not, tirthapada, of the Lord's lotus feet. Sevaya, to devotional service. Jivan, living, api, although, mrita, dead, he, indeed, sa, he. Translation. Anyone whose work is not meant to elevate him to religious life, anyone whose religious ritualistic performances do not raise him to renunciation, and anyone situated in renunciation that does not lead him to devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead must be considered dead, although he is breathing. Purport. Devahuti's statement is that since she was attached to living with her husband for sense gratification, which does not lead to liberation from material entanglement, her life was simply a waste of time. Any work one performs that does not lead to the stage of religious life is useless activity. Everyone is by nature inclined to some sort of work, and when that work leads one to religious life, and the religious life leads one to renunciation, and the renunciation leads one to devotional service, one attains the perfection of work. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, any work that does not lead ultimately to the standard of devotional service is a cause of bondage in the material world. Yagyartat karmananyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. Unless one is gradually elevated to the position of devotional service, beginning from his natural activity, he is to be considered a dead body. Work which does not lead one to the understanding of Krishna consciousness is considered useless. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadhati Swabadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Badakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavanishvare Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nehayat karma dharmaya, na viragaya kalpate, na tirtha pada sevayai, jivan api mrito hisa. Anyone whose work is not meant to elevate him to religious life, anyone whose ritualistic performances do not raise him to renunciation, and anyone situated in renunciation that does not lead him to devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead must be considered dead, although he is breathing. So although we are reading here something which sounds like some sage preaching to some subordinate individual, it is in actual fact Devahuti who is speaking to her husband. So she is not here preaching to her husband, but she is here lamenting and expressing her heart that she had unfortunately missed out on the ultimate opportunity of life in her humility, thinking that she had not taken full advantage of her husband's association because he was a great saintly individual. And the principle in devotional services, which is something very important to understand, is that there is one thing like an opportunity in devotional service, and that opportunity can sometimes be very rare. But then there is another element of being able to take advantage of the opportunity, which is a whole other thing altogether. So that is sometimes what we see. We see sometimes people, hear about people who sat next to Prabhupada in an airplane. And then Prabhupada had some discussion with them, and and it was very nice discussion. So we see what an amazing opportunity to have the opportunity to sit next to Srila Prabhupada in an airplane. But then, how much could that individual, how much could they take advantage of that opportunity? We read about one devotee, this one story in Australia of a person who had a farm. He once contacted the devotees, and then he wanted to Shishir Argavinda Dev Ki, contacted the devotees, and he said he wanted to donate a farm. And then ended up donating, I don't know how many, it's thousands of hectares of land. In Australia, they have these massive farms. And when the devotees asked him, like, who are you and why do you want to give us this farm? Then he said, no, he told them the story how a long time ago, he had once sat next to a very elderly Indian Swami on an airplane. And he had some discussion with him, and he was somehow it made such a big impression on him that later at a certain point, when he wanted to stop farming, wanted to do something, and he thought, let me find some of those kind of people, let me give them the farm. And he didn't even know that actually it was, that was Prabhupada, and it was Prabhupada's movement. The devotees sort of put it together. So that gentleman, we could see, somehow he had the opportunity, and then also it made a big impression, and he took great advantage of it. But it's not always so easy. It's not always easy to take advantage of the opportunities that are sometimes put before us. And we see that a big part of the Bhāgavatam and Vedic culture in general is to just remind every single human being of the amazing opportunity they have. And that very rare to have the opportunity to be a human, but even rarer to take full advantage of what that opportunity gives us. So here, Devahuti is lamenting in this section that she felt that she had not taken sufficient advantage of her husband's association. She had seen him simply as a partner in sense gratification, instead of understanding that beyond just being her husband, he was also a great saintly person, and that the ultimate gift that he could really give her was not a flying palace and children and so much wealth, but actually, and we see at the end, what she asked him to bestow upon her is fearlessness. Fearlessness from material existence, fearlessness from ignorance, fearlessness from being entangled in the web of fruitive activities. And therefore, at the end, that's what she realized. That was really the ultimate benefit that she could have gotten from his association. And we are all in the similar category. We are all having association with our spiritual masters, but who of us are really fully taking advantage of what that association can give us? So we all come with mixed motivations, and that is okay. That is not that mixed motivations is a disqualifying feature, but we have to understand that what we are working with. And are we really taking full advantage of what Srila Prabhupada, we see also Prabhupada's institution can give us? Many people, it is interesting in economics, then you can study how there's generally a very different demographic that becomes part of a movement, of a what they call an insurrection movement, meaning a movement that is countercultural. So we see many of these movements, they start very countercultural, and then it attracts a certain kind of person. It attracts people that they want to change the world, make the world a better place. There's something wrong with the status quo. And people who are interested in sacrifice and going beyond their own individual concerns. And then what ultimately happens is the movement, some of them, they become successful. They become established. They become established in society. They start gaining some material facilities. And then we see a different kind of character that could potentially become attracted to the same movement, because now that same movement offers very different possibilities and potentials and opportunities. Now it offers, for example, maybe the opportunity to get stable employment, or it gives you the opportunity to be, to make some money, or whatever it is. So institutions also have to be careful, because what ultimately is it trying to give people? But for each one of us as an individual to think, yes, what is my point in becoming part of the Krishna consciousness movement? What is it that I hope to gain? We look at the Black Lives Matters movement, which started, as a movement that had some kind of goal in engendering what they see as some positive change in society. But then later it came out that the individuals who run it bought, like in 2021, I think they bought like $2 billion worth of private property, all over California and whatever. So the point is that, it happens again and again. There's some kind of a cause, but then as the cause becomes successful and there becomes a lot of money, then one's motivations becomes tested. Now, as to what Devahuti is saying here, she's making, a very, very powerful verse actually, reminding us of keeping our purpose clear and starting to engage in any kind of action really, but specifically then for those who are interested in spiritual action. So what is important to remember here is that the real thing that defines us in our life and defines what we are doing, defines what we are doing with our life, is not really so much what we are doing, but why we are doing it. That is really the main thing. The most classic example of that is, for example, Prabhupada also uses it, if you compare a soldier killing someone on the battlefield, and then that same soldier coming back home and having a fight with someone, and then shooting him in the street. Arguably exactly the same activity. What is he doing? Well, he's shooting some other person. But the massive different consequences, even though it's exactly the same thing. But the difference is in why. Why did you do it? What is the intention? So similarly, in life, really with us, what we are doing, yes, it is something to be considered, because we can't just do anything. And when it comes to our service, yes, it's important to get a service that sort of works. Some services are more suited for us than others. But that's not really the main thing. The main thing is, why are you doing it? The intention behind why we are doing it. Because that's what's going to actually determine the result that you get, that you as an individual get from what you are doing. We see in mundane society or in secular society, a massive emphasis being placed on the specific career that you have. In one sense, when you're outside in the world, that is the thing that defines you. If you meet someone new, and they're like, "Hey, my name is John," and then you say, "Hey, John, so who are you? What do you do? What is your identity?" Then you say, "Oh, I'm a doctor," or "I'm a this," or "I'm a that." And we see that people invest between 10 to 20 years they can invest of their life in basically just getting a specific kind of career. If you want to become a doctor, that's years and years of investment. Speak about the money that you have to invest. But in Vedic society, it's like, it doesn't really matter so much, really. It doesn't really matter whether you're a doctor or whether you're a street sweeper or whatever it is. That is not really what defines you. That's not really what determines who you are. Who you are is determined by the quality of your consciousness that is put behind every action that you do. And that is the real defining feature of your life. That is who you are. That's really who you are. So we see in Vaishnava society, it's very interesting how we have a whole different kind of hierarchy. And our hierarchy is based on spiritual advancement. Spiritual advancement, that is what we that's what we honor. And we say, "Who are you?" Oh, if some devotee comes, people say, "Who's that devotee?" Then someone says, "Oh, he's a very advanced devotee because he has done, so much service, and has done these things, and people are like, "Oh, that's who he is. That's who he is. That's what defines him." So we see that Devahuti is explaining here that is the understanding that we have to always keep in mind, that what is the ultimate purpose of our activity, and that has to be kept in mind at every stage of life. So she explains here that work is ultimately meant to elevate us to Dharma. Karma must lead to Dharma. So karma is inevitable. Action is inevitable. You're going to do something. Nahi kaschit kshanam api jatutishtatya karma krit karyate yavasha karma sarva prakriti jair gunai. Krishna says that not even for a moment can anyone stop doing any karma? One will be pushed to perform some karma according to the modes that you have acquired, according to the instincts that are built into your body. You are inclined to a specific kind of work. He says, therefore, do not work. Work is inevitable. That's not a difficult point. But the problem is, why are you working? If you are simply working to make money, to support yourself, well, that's a very low goal of life. That is really aiming low, if that is the success in life. Now in Kali Yuga, even that's not so easy. In Kali Yuga, basically, if you to live in secular society, to be able to make enough money to support your family, you're basically a hero. If you can like somehow pull that off, that is quite an accomplishment. It's not so easy. But really, ultimately, work has a purpose to elevate us to Dharma. And how does that happen? That happens by adopting duties and responsibilities. The acceptance of responsibilities is what allows us to transform ordinary karma into Dharma. Because now the reason why I am performing my work is because of this purpose. And those duties then have to be connected to Krishna's system. Therefore, that is the whole point of Varnashram Dharma. So, Varnashram Dharma means the responsibilities that are then meted out to each individual so that his actions and his activities can have some meaning, some purpose. Why am I doing these things? Yes, because I have accepted these responsibilities. And now my actions, immediately, they become imbued with a sense of meaning and purpose, beyond just my own personal gain. So we see that therefore each of the ashrams, they protect us. And they protect us from meaningless work. Suffering is not the problem. Working hard is not the problem. Meaningless work, meaningless difficulty, that is the disease. That is actually the problem. So much depression and all these things that people experience, it's not because of the obstacles in your life. It's not because of the difficulties in your life. It's because that your life has no meaning. So therefore, it becomes completely intolerable when you have to do these things, but there's no purpose to it. But why is there no purpose to your life? Why is there no purpose to your suffering? Because you are simply suffering for yourself. You are simply suffering because you are trying to grab as much sense gratification than you can out of life. And how noble is that? How glorious is that? Not at all. There's no real, it is amazing how little juice there is and little meaning there is if the only goal of your life is just to work for yourself and for your own enjoyment. But if you want to exit out of that trap, you have to accept some responsibility for something beyond your own sense gratification. Then you can work for something that is more important than yourself. Then your obstacles, your sufferings, the inevitable difficulties that you will experience in this world, you become buffered from them because you say, yes, it is okay, because there's a point to all this. There's some meaning to this. So Dharma, that is how one attains the stage of Dharma, is by accepting these responsibilities. And what responsibilities do you accept? Then those responsibilities for the devotee, it is determined by Krishna's system. You can accept, you see outside, if you go outside in the secular world, people are hungry for some meaning. And then people take up some kind of a cause. Many people take up a cause because they feel they are nibbled, and the wolf of meaninglessness is like it's leering at them, ready to attack them. And they have all experienced what it feels like if you tumble deep into that hole of depression because there's no meaning in your life. So then people look for a cause, and then they take up some kind of a cause, and they fight for the whales in Japan, or they fight for some kind of a thing. And it's amazing the causes that people can get. So why do people look for a cause? Because then at least there's some relief. Now what I'm doing has some purpose. So at least then I can get fired up. There's some juice from that. But all these temporary purposes, how deep can it really go? How deep can it really go? Not that deep. Because these purposes, they are all, as Prabhupada calls, they're all just stopgap solutions, trying to just solve these little individual problems. that ultimately, how much meaning can there really be in there when you take into account the ocean of misery that is present in the material world? Just earlier, I think it's later in this chapter, in Kardama Muni's prayer, or Kapila Muni's teachings, he explains that there is an ocean of tears in this world. And that ocean of tears is only dried up when one is able to focus one's mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. And Prabhupada says in the purport that there's an ocean of tears that is created by the suffering living entities within this material world. So when you take up your little petty cause, how much can you really do to mitigate the suffering in this world? When there's an ocean of suffering. And what are you going to do? You take your little teaspoon and you're going to go in there and try to scoop something out there. That is not an intelligent proposal. So Dharma then means, what kind of duties do you want to take up? Do you want to take up some petty cause? No. We want to take up Krishna's cause. So therefore Krishna says, okay, if you want a meaningful life, you have two options for most people. Means you either choose to be a renunciate or you choose to be a householder. And you do it according to my rules. You don't make up the rules for what it means. And that is the thing that people don't understand. We're living in an era where everybody wants a customized life. Everyone wants to individualize or customize their life. Now, there's some individuality that's going to be there, inevitable, and that's also encouraged. But at the end, you can't make up what it means to be a husband or a wife or a brahmachari or a spiritual master. Those rules are made up by Krishna. That He is the one who has designed it in a certain way. It has a certain meaning in and of itself. And you have to live up to what that meaning is. Then you will get the full benefit of what those ashrams can give you. That's why it's called an ashram. Ashram means a shelter. A shelter from what? A shelter from meaninglessness. A shelter from meaningless suffering. So the ashram protects you by giving you duties that are transcendentally descending upon you, that are designed by Krishna. Krishna says, if you adopt these duties, they will protect you. They will protect you. And if you pursue these duties, it will lead you somewhere. But where will it lead you? It will lead you to vairagya, to detachment. That is how Varnashram Dharma is set up. It is designed in such a way that you can take very concrete, very specific duties within this world that will guide you and give shape to your life. And as you pursue them, you will become detached. Detached. Without detachment, there can be no peace. Without detachment, there could be no satisfaction. Therefore, detachment is that key thing. Our misery and our suffering is exponentially compounded to the degree to which you are attached to the material energy. To the degree to which you are attached to things going your own way. To that extent, you will increase the amount of frustration and difficulty and pain you experience in this world. In Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, he explains that there are the 5 kleshas. The 5 kleshas, kleshas means afflictions. The 5 afflictions that cover the consciousness of the conditioned living entity. Ignorance, attachment, aversion, asmita means a false sense of self, and then abhiniveshita, which means willfulness, which either is defined as the stubborn desire to continue pursuing your own agenda. That is one of the main causes of suffering in this life. If you perform your dharma according to Krishna's instructions, you will become cured. You will become cured from your attachments, from your aversions, and from your willfulness, your stubbornness to think that things should go your way, and then you will be happy. And that misconception is at the root of a lot of tragedy in the general world and in the Krishna consciousness society also, because it is not easy to give up one's stubbornness. I was reading some letters now where Prabhupada was writing, and Prabhupada says that Krishna consciousness means submissiveness, meaning that one has to be, now obviously that submission has to be properly directed, not just submission to anyone and everyone, and submission without intelligence, but without submission, Without submission, there can be no cooperation. Because cooperation inevitably means you have to abandon a level of how you want things to be. Sometimes you are extremely lucky and you find another person who wants to do things exactly the same way that you want to do it. But that only happens every now and again. And even then, even if you find that person, it will not happen always for that person. Like it will, maybe sometimes you get lucky. So any kind of cooperation means you have to be willing to give up how you want things to go. And that is one of the main things that we have to learn in the material world. Therefore, it's not just like this other thing that's sort of there that disturbs us. It is the thing. It is the thing you have to learn. It is the core thing you have to learn if you want to become freed from the ocean of suffering that you ultimately create for yourself by this stubborn willfulness to have things in a specific way. So Krishna then gives us dharma, and that dharma leads us to understanding, yes, I have to act according to Krishna's instructions. There lies my success. There lies my happiness. There lies my salvation. And the more I can engage with that, the more that will take me out of this difficult path. And what is that difficult? What is the difficult path in the material world? Is it the path of trying to figure out what should I do? That big question that confounds us again and again in different situations in life. So, but one will never be able to see the proper route that one should take if there is no detachment, inner detachment. And one has to understand that that detachment, to perceive it, is difficult. In the immature stages of our movement, people thought that detachment is related to ashram. That only in one ashram or one color is there detachment. Attachment can be anywhere. It can be in all ashrams. And detachment can also be present everywhere. It is not so easy to perceive who is really attached and who is really detached. And one will be tested also at a certain point in life. So the lesson is, do not be so eager to judge other people based on who is attached. And also, do not be so confident in yourself and overestimating the own level of your own detachment, because it will be tested. So we see numerous examples in the past times, both in the Bhāgavatam and then specifically in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where we can see repeatedly in Lord Mahaprabhu's pastimes where some of his householder devotees also will manifest great detachment. Or we see the example of Pundarik Vidyanidhi, who wasn't just a householder but looked like a full-on sense enjoyer. But in actual fact, internally he was very detached. And at the same time then, renunciates that can also actually be quite attached, even though they might be situated in the renounced ashram. So, detachment is possible for any devotee in any stage of life, but it is based on the sincerity of our purpose and the strictness by which we really take up our duties. But then ultimately understanding what is the purpose of this. And as we said here, what is the purpose of that detachment? If your vairagya does not lead to tirthapada seva, to the service at the lotus feet of Krishna, then your renunciation is useless also. Renunciation in itself is not valuable. It is just a very useful thing to have if you are interested in serving Krishna. And without it, your service to Krishna will become very complicated. And we see that also. We see sometimes devotees that are very attached to serving Krishna, but they're also very willful and stubborn, and they create a lot of complications on their path to serving Krishna. So that is there. But detachment really helps, and it is necessary, because it gives the space within which one is able to consider Krishna's desire. If one is not detached, one will never be really able to grasp Krishna's desire, because there is simply no space within the heart for anything else besides whatever it is that you are attached to. The nature of the heart is that it can really only be attached to one thing at a time. That's how it works. The heart attachment can be very intense, but there's a limit to how many things we can be attached to. Now, in the materialist, the Bhagavad Gita says that the material intelligence is dispersed
looking for so many different specific goals. But actually it's one attachment. It is the goal for personal sense gratification. And then you're not sure, should I do this or this or this or this? And if you have a woman hunter or and Kali Yuga men hunters, either side, people like trying out relations with so many different people. Yes, it looks like the heart is attached to many different things, but actually it's only attached to one thing, which is yourself, your own personal desire. But if one wants to have space in the heart to be able to consider Krishna's desire, there has to be some detachment. In the cleansing of the Gundicha temple in that Leela and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we see how Prabhupada, it says how that pastime obviously illustrates how there is hard work to purify, to clean. And it's in Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati explains that it is Lord Chaitanya is teaching us through this example how the heart should be cleansed. And the Prabhupada says that the heart should become like cool marble. Become like cool like marble. And then the Lord can take his seat there. Prabhupada says that the Lord is disturbed when there is impurity in the heart. And therefore the Lord is a little hesitant to take his seat there. And how does the Lord take his seat in our heart? He appears by his desire. His desire is the means by which we connect to Krishna within the heart. As we connect in our heart with Krishna's desire, then the Lord takes his residence there. But it has to be cooling. So without that detachment, there is agitation. And the Lord does not fully manifest himself there. And that then is that complete circle where one goes from karma to dharma to vairagya and to tirthapada seva, to the point in which one can then really, Prabhupada says, then one can enthrone the Lord within the heart. The Lord can take his seat there. And that is the real goal. And one does not want to get stuck at any point of this progression. One has to continue moving. But the progression is not that one first does one and then do the other and then do the other. It's not that first I will do my karma, then later I will do my dharma, then after that I will do some vairagya, and then hopefully I have some time at the end of my life to do some tirthapada seva. It is not, the progression is not chronological. It is happening at the same time. Therefore we see that what is the primary promise we make to the spiritual master at the very beginning is to chant our rounds every single day. You start with the tirthapada seva now. While you're trying to figure out your karma, while you're trying to understand dharma, while you're trying to practice some renunciation, trying to become detached, at the very beginning, you establish the core of hearing and chanting in your life. For the devotee, that is the origin of meaning. That is what makes the whole thing meaningful. That is around which the whole thing is arranged. If you see devotees that are very depressed, specifically, you oftentimes see when people move out of the temple, people living in secular society, and they have to work, oftentimes very hard, because that's how the world works. Then you become sad. People think the problem is my job. That's the problem in my life, is this job that I have. That's why I'm so unhappy. The problem is that if you are not going to chant your rounds, then you are working very hard to sustain someone who is not chanting his rounds. You understand? Yourself. If you chant your rounds immediately, then you are working for a devotee. Then at least your money is going towards sustaining the life of a devotee. But if there's no devotion, then you're working so hard to maintain yourself, and you're like, yeah, but why am I working so hard to sustain this person? He's not really doing anything valuable. He's just watching movies and spacing out. And now I have to go work so hard to support him. I would also become frustrated, isn't it, if you have to support a person like that. So the moment that we chant, the moment that we become connected to Krishna consciousness by hearing and chanting, everything becomes meaningful. It doesn't necessarily become easy. It does not necessarily remove all suffering, but it becomes meaningful. At least there is some purpose to what you are doing. At least you are working so that you can have some space within which you can perform your worship of Krishna. And the whole thing becomes there is some goal towards it. Otherwise, this is no goal. Now, therefore, naturally, one has to obviously then choose carefully. One has to choose an occupation that will at least give one the time and space so that you can practice your spiritual life. That has to be there. Therefore, one has to be very careful in making these decisions, and specifically being very careful to be swept away either by promises of making lots of money or promises of status, which are all means by which the secular world tries to trick people into doing occupations that are actually very troublesome and unpleasant. But they make it look cool, and they make it look prestigious. And then people do it. But actually, the actual occupation is very unpleasant, very stressful, very, very burdensome. But they have to trick people into the idea of a career. A career is like the greatest, what do you call it? The greatest fraud that is being committed. This concept of that your purpose in life is going to be fulfilled by performing some kind of a career. Careers are not bad, but it's not, your identity cannot be based on your career. You're setting yourself up for a lot of misery, and you're investing more into something that it really means. We see therefore the Vaishnava's principle is, yes, do something. It doesn't really matter what you do. No? But do, what should you do? You should do whatever, look at your opportunities, and do that thing. Firstly, do something which is relative, is free from sin, as far as possible. But then do something so that you can make the most money with the least amount of time possible. Whatever that is within your capacity. Try to balance those things out. And that's really what it is. But the moment you start investing status or identity behind what you're doing, then your decision making becomes confused. Then you become confused, and then you start making decisions, then you start investing meaning into something that is not really meaningful. So therefore, find something that you like, and that is oftentimes what we see. There are certain things that we actually like to do, and it's oftentimes very difficult to be honest about what are the things that we actually like to do. So in terms of occupation-wise, there's something to add in there. But again, it is when we begin with the end in mind, when we keep in mind that the ultimate goal is Tirthapada Seva, then we can understand all these things. Then we can understand how to practice renunciation. We can understand what kind of dharma to take up. And we can understand what kind of karma to do when we begin with this end in mind. And therefore Devahuti is lamenting because she feels that she missed the point. She missed it. She missed out on the opportunity to take the association of Kardama Muni. And therefore she is lamenting here. But we see that in the next chapter, he appeases her and he says, do not be disappointed with yourself. You are actually praiseworthy because the Supreme Personality of Godhead will enter into your womb. He says, you have undertaken sacred vows and God will bless you. Hence you should worship the Lord with great faith through sensory control, religious observances, austerity, and gifts of your money and charity. So that is natural. Any devotee, if you read, you look at some of the bhajans of the great devotees, they oftentimes, all of them lament that they have wasted their life. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Narottam Das Thakur, that is a recurring theme in Vaishnava literature, is that we feel that we have wasted our opportunities. And it is actually a good place to be in. If you think that you have done everything you could, well then you probably haven't, because you're probably a little self-satisfied. But it is when we feel that, I could have done more, I've wasted my opportunity. That ultimately urges us forward to not waste more time. Because at each moment, it is natural. It is not so easy to not waste time. Actually very difficult. It takes a lot of discipline and energy. So, but if we keep the ultimate goal in mind, we see that at least there is a core within our life. By chanting our rounds sincerely and hearing and chanting, there is a core of your life that you know for sure it is meaningful and it is eternal. And that really carries us, can carry us through very dark days, because we do not know what destiny has in store for us. And as destiny unfolds, you have to have something to hold on to so you can move through those things. And that is this mentality that is being expressed here at Devahuti. So we can end here and here if there are any questions or any comments or any reflections that anyone would like to share.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Hari Vilas Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Two things. First thing is the last point you were addressing. So Devahuti is lamenting. You mentioned something, how acharyas are also lamenting. So what about her case? Is she really lamenting? Because the verses that she's speaking while lamenting, they sounds like, I don't know, some super teachings of some like eternal associate of the Lord from the spiritual world or something like that.
Yeah.
And her husband is pure devotee and her son is the Supreme Lord. So actually, what is the lamenting? Is she just entering this mood because in this way she's cherishing more Krishna consciousness, or can you give a little bit more light on this?
Yeah, well, as I said, if you just read the one verse, it looks like she's teaching, but she's not teaching. She's expressing the truth, because in the next verse, what did she say? She says, "My Lord, surely I have been solidly cheated by the insurmountable illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For in spite of having obtained your association, which gives liberation from material bondage, I did not seek such liberation." So it is a strong lamenting tone. And she's not teaching him, "Oh, do you know about Tirthapada Seva?" She's saying, "No, Tirthapada Seva, but I missed out." She's expressing the truth. It's like what happens is that sometimes the truth comes out. And then we are realizing this is the truth. And then we see it in the lives of devotees also. You'll see sometimes when something like, we all know these things, but then something happens or someone leaves their body, and then devotees are all like, yeah, just like, this is the truth. And then we say, yes, material life is very temporary and we have to remember it. So it's like in moments of when things get very real, we say the things that we've said many times, but we say it now with very deep conviction. So she's having that experience. Yes, I've wasted my time. And I think it's real. It's real. We see that it's not just that she is really feeling like that. We see that in the CC, we see that Sanatana Goswami, when he travels to see Lord Chaitanya for the first time, and then in Puri, and then he has all these sores on his body, and the Lord continues to hug him, and then he makes this decision that I will now commit suicide. And the Prabhupada says in that one purport, it says that sometimes it is natural actually for the advanced devotees. They very often feel like they want to give up their life, but then they can't because of their service. So because of their service, they have to continue because they're not attached to their own life. So it's very interesting. So there's this kind of a transcendental depression. It's also there, and it's not fake. It's like Sanatana Goswami was not just, he was really feeling vile, feeling really bad. And he thought that the only solution is I have to commit suicide. And then Lord Chaitanya shook him up. Lord Chaitanya, he said, Lord Chaitanya looked at he told Haridas Thakur, he said, "Look at this fellow." He said, "This fellow is thinking that his body is his property." He says, "What do you have to say about that, Haridas? What do you think about that?" So he was then telling Sanatana Goswami that the problem was not that he is feeling vile. The problem was not that he was lamenting, feeling that he is not good. The problem was he thought his body is his own property, and then he think he could commit suicide. That was the problem. But it is actually natural in deep humility that we see that it is natural that if we look at ourselves honestly, and even not just very advanced devotees, but even just us, like quote-unquote ordinary devotees, people who have, to a certain extent, become able to recognize the truth. Yes, is there not so much to lament about? How glorious are we really? How much have we really done? How much have we really taken advantage of the opportunities we have been given? Not much. So this is an element of truth in it. So I think her experience is very real. And, but then she's pacified by her husband. They say, "Hey, okay, calm down. It's okay, I understand, but you did good things also. You really lived a good life of vows, and you have a lot of good things going for you." So that's also sometimes a Vaishnava exchange, where one Vaishnava is lamenting, and another Vaishnava says, "No, you are wonderful. You're a wonderful devotee. Don't feel so bad." But it is a natural element, I think, of when we start to become mature, that we can sometimes look at the truth. And the truth hurts. If it's the real truth, it's going to sting a little what the real truth is. But the Vaishnava, he relishes that because rather a hurting truth than a soothing lie. Any other questions, comments?
Hi, Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Bill.
So nice to have you giving class again. I always end up having like 5 or 6 pages of notes. You said something really nice and simple, but very punctual. You were talking about how Krishna consciousness means submissiveness. And the ability to be cooperating with devotees also has to have some attitude of submissiveness. And so when we're interacting with someone that we have love and trust with, it's much easier to be submissive to that person and to that devotee, or even whether it's a guru or a senior devotee or a shiksha guru.
Yeah.
But when it comes to someone who might be in a higher authoritative position, but they might, the way that they're approaching it might be coming more from a point of false ego than an actual love and trust manner. So we want to still be submissive, but we don't want to, as you said, we don't want to be submissive of our intelligence. So how do we kind of navigate through that in the proper way without creating offenses?
Well, firstly, we should be careful to make that judgment of thinking who is acting out of false ego and who is not. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in the Madhurya Kadambini, which you guys are reading, he says there how he explains the different stages of devotees, and he says how, the one characteristic of performing devotional service is that good qualities develop in that devotee. But then he says, but it's not so easy to actually judge who has these qualities or not. The conditioned soul, by its natural tendency, will emphasize, he will think, oh, the person who I like, that person, he is advanced, he has good qualities. But he says, but the real thing is how attached is that individual to Krishna's service. That is really the main thing. So we see that in the nectar of instruction also, yes, it's just like the water in the Ganges. Sometimes there's turds floating in the Ganges. Sometimes one devotee, he was taking bath in the Ganges one day, and he felt something bump into him, and he looked down and it was a hand. It was a severed human hand. It was just bumped into him. And then he was just scooping it, pushing it to the side. So the point is that, but the Ganges is pure. So be very little cautious in judging the purity of people's intentions based on their external personality traits. You understand? There's a certain part of the personality which is external, and we can say, oh, that's the false ego. It's like saying, I don't like that devotee's face. Just like how the face looks. What does it really matter? It's just external. It's an external part of their body. So similarly, there's this external facing part of the personality. Sometimes people are impatient, or they can be a little harsh, or they can speak in ways that we don't like. It's just how they are, understand? It's just like how their face looks or what their personality is. But for us, that is the thing. That's the main thing. That's like who this person is. So we go off the bodily platform, but then we go actually not too far. We don't go really far. We go into this very externalized part of the personality. So be careful firstly in judging who is attached or not. And just because a person has some personality traits that you find difficult to deal with, don't now assume that this person is actually not advanced. Because that's what Vishwanath Chakravarti says. The problem is we judge good character based on what gives us pleasure or not, what we like or not. But what's the problem with that? You can meet people that have extremely pleasant personalities, but they're actually very dubious, and they're actually very immature and but then we can be like, that's why you have something called false gurus, with people that, you don't become a false guru if you don't have a lot of charisma. There's people with a lot of charisma out there, so you can easily be fooled. So that's where you have to that's the first thing, be careful with thinking that. Therefore, the best thing is that at the end, your cooperation with devotees in the Krishna consciousness movement is not on behalf of the devotee. It is on behalf of Prabhupada. You understand? That is why you are cooperating. Don't cooperate just with people because you like them. It's natural, but that is a very immature stage to be in. If you're only going to cooperate with devotees that you like, then your usefulness to the Krishna consciousness movement also becomes extremely limited. Because then you're going to be mental. And then people have to manage you the whole time because, oh God, now this is happening, now this person can't work with that person. Oh, that's a big problem. This person can't work with that person. Why? Oh, because they don't like one another. So it's natural that that's there, and it's okay. But there's another alternative. there's another option to you, which is if you transcend that level of functioning, your use to Srila Prabhupada greatly expands. Because now you can cooperate with so many other people. But it's for his sake, it's not for their sake. You're not cooperating with them. They are performing the service to Prabhupada. So therefore Prabhupada asked people to cooperate on behalf of the fact that he is asking them to cooperate. On his behalf. He says, cooperate for my sake. I know, sometimes you see these letters, and he says, yes, I know that you really don't like this devotee. He says, I know that there's some problem between you two. But he says, but for my sake, I am asking you, please cooperate, because it is this, my service has to continue, and therefore we cooperate. So when it becomes very practical, actually. Otherwise it becomes this whole thing, oh, how do I submit them? Is this person, like, are they really acting off the false ego level? Because if they aren't, then I don't really know if I want to work with them. No, it's practical. It's for Prabhupada's seva. And the seva is very practical. The mission has to continue. The chanting has to continue. Everything related to the chanting has to continue. Therefore, we have to cooperate. And you have to cooperate with all kinds of different devotees. And of all kinds of levels of spiritual advancement. And of all kinds of levels of personality types. You know? And then you cut away this whole other thing. Yes, I cooperate because what are they trying to get me to do? They're trying to get me to do something for Prabhupada. So yes, I will cooperate, and I won't like be so guarded in that sense. But at the same time, again, use your intelligence. You know, that's also there. Like when it comes to these kind of basic things, yes, like sometimes you can also voice your opinion if people don't have good ideas, or if people really do something in a way that's not so good, then you can also say something. But the principle is just that we don't cooperate based on the spiritual advancement of the person who's giving me the instruction. We cooperate for the sake of Prabhupada's mission. And that is really what is pushing us forward. And then it allows us to really deal with certain things. But it's also a skill to learn how to work with certain people that you don't necessarily get along with. And sometimes you need a little distance. Like, you know, that's also there. Yeah, you can have some distance. It's not that we have the same level of intimacy in our relationships with all devotees. Some devotees you can have a more formal relationship with. And that's not nice. So also to learn how to properly position yourself from people so that you can reduce any potential tension and still be able to work together. So that's all part of becoming mature for the sake of being able to really increase how much we can do. You know? So I remember once with my spiritual master, and then and then someone asked him a question about, it was a little awkward. You know, sometimes devotees, they can ask very awkward questions. So this person says, yes, Maharaj, you know, like I actually met this other devotee, and he was just telling me how little he likes you, and like how he thinks this, there are so many difficulties with you, whatever. And Maharaj is like, he's like, yeah, you know, he says, you know, sometimes people's planets just don't really connect together, you know. So he says, me and this devotee, yeah, somehow it just doesn't really work when we do stuff together, you know. So therefore, we just don't really do so much stuff together. But he was like, yeah, what to do? Doesn't like me, no problem. So therefore, that's the attitude you have to do. If you take it personal, then it's going to be difficult for you to do stuff, because the reality is that to get stuff done for Prabhupada's sake, yeah, we have to really cooperate with a lot of different people. And as we become more serious, we also become easier to work with. And as we become more mature as individuals, we also, at least we are not the ones who elicit the difficulties. You understand? It's like, at least if you can work on that, then your problems will be greatly minimized, because you're not the one that causes the issues. Issues will still be there, because other people have their issues. But at least if we can come to that platform, then there's so much for us to do, so many more things we can engage with, so many more projects we can push forward, so much more service can be there if we just go to that higher level, versus being one of those people that have to be managed. You understand? If you stay on that platform where you're difficult to cooperate with, then you might find your position in Krishna consciousness, but it's difficult, and the services opportunities is limited, because now we have to find some specific place in which you can sort of do something that you're not disturbing other people or being disturbed by other people. You understand? It's a little difficult. So we need some people who says, okay, let me go up. So I'll finish off here by reading a quote. So this is a letter that Prabhupada wrote to Jayapataka Swami. It was very interesting, in 1972. So in the previous letter, Prabhupada says, I beg to acknowledge the receipt of your letter, and I have noted the contents with pleasure. So in this letter, Jayapataka Maharaj is expressing to Prabhupada how attached he has become to the Mayapur project. And he is asking Prabhupada if that is bad. Is this a bad thing? I'm very attached to this project, what I'm doing here. Is it a bad thing? Should I be more detached? So Prabhupada said, I'm so much happy to hear from you all the good news of our Mayapur center. He said, no, your liking of your engagement there is not at all an inappropriate attachment. Rather, it is your qualification for pleasing your spiritual master. Attachment must be there for Krishna or for Maya. So you have become attached to developing the Mayapur center. That is Krishna's work. So Krishna appreciates very much when his devotees become attached to him in this way. Yes, the cooperative spirit of working together without any argument is especially prominent in Mayapur, more than in other places in India. Therefore you are successful and the work is going on quickly to completion. That is because all of you working there have become very much attached to the dust from Lord Chaitanya's lotus feet, Tirthapada Seva. And because you have got such deep personal interest with that engagement of work, you want to see that it is done nicely without any hindrance of selfish motivation. Never mind all kinds of conditions of the material nature. That idea has become prominent for all of you. It is bigger than Maya's idea. Therefore, Maya cannot interfere to make you quarrel or other things. But you especially are to take the credit. From the very beginning, you wanted that place, and you got the land, you got money from me, and now you have built the place by your concentration of energy. That is wanted. If there is some discrepancy anywhere, some non-cooperation, fighting, or if the work is slow or not to the standard, it is to be supposed that the person or persons in charge are not very much attached to Krishna. That means they will discriminate. My engagement is not good, others' engagement is good, like that. They do not know the secret of surrendering to Krishna. Such surrendered devotee sees that everything is part of Krishna's plan. That whatever is meant to be, I am doing that. So let me do it with my full attention to every detail. Let me become absorbed in such service, never mind what it is. But let all other considerations be forgotten, and my only desire to do the thing best for Krishna's pleasure alone be my motive. That is an advanced stage of understanding devotional service and Krishna consciousness. Thank you very much for you kindly coming to the point. So very interesting. A lot in that letter, but showing that point that really what is important. Prabhupada said, it is not what, it is just, yes, whatever I am doing, whatever is my seva, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So let me give it my full attention. And that is the key. That is the key to understanding that peace, meaning, absorption, it is not dependent on externals, but it is dependent on an inner attitude. And if one can tap into that attitude, then one will get what one is looking for. And if one is still thinking that my salvation lies in having the external conditions of life be organized in a specific way, if that's where your faith lies, if you think there I will find happiness, if things can be this way I will be happy, then you are chasing a carrot on a stick, because it will never be like that. Okay, we will end here. Thank you very much. Sorry for going a little over time. Grantara Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Nittai Go Premanande.